without working for someone else? Or how can I make money without exchanging my labor for dollars? Just that question alone is powerful enough for money to stand at attention and recognize you as a force. And if you think about it, if you're struggling with money, you probably haven't asked yourself that question. And if you have, you probably haven't put that much emotion behind it, because emotion properly used is really the fuel or the gas to push you, to push your being, to push your essence, because your spirit doesn't really need your feelings. You know what I'm saying? The other part of you needs that. Now, I don't want to get too spooky, but you know there's more parts of you. When you say, I want to do this, and then there's another part of you that says, I don't want to do this, then how is it that this one being is having two different parts of you disagreeing? So therefore, you have to link these things. Okay, so again, creativity represents your way of linking the invisible to the visible, which is what money is. Okay, so that's very, very important. So another way to show that money is not just what we see and what we can touch is the fact that banking, okay, if you look at the whole concept of banking, what is banking? What is a bank? A bank is nothing but a house for your money. And I said before, the term house is used in many ways. So banking is another example of invisible, because when you go to a bank, you put your money in the bank, okay? Everyone that has their money in the bank does not hold at the physical location all of the money that we deposit inside the bank. They only have to have a fractional amount, a piece, 10%. It's called fractional reserve banking. So what am I saying? If a bank had 1,000 customers and 1,000 customers deposited $10 each, okay? It's $10,000. Under fractional reserve banking, the banks only have to have $1,000 physically at that branch to operate legally. Okay? Now, you think about that. The people that deposit the money, okay, deposit $10,000 total. Okay, 100 customers. But the bank only has to have 10%. So if every customer was to withdraw the amount of money that they had at that bank, the bank physically at that branch could not give them their money. How is that? Right? If that was somebody in the street, you would call them a crook. Right? So there is an invisible amount of money that doesn't have to be in that physical branch, but yet the bank still operates. So that's magic. You know, that's an invisible principle. So a bank operates off of money that's not there. And they loan money based upon something that's not there. Because how can a bank only have a certain amount of deposits, physical deposits that people actually go deposit and give, but yet they can loan 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, maybe 1,000% more than the bank has physically in its possession. So they're loaning money that's not there. Understand that. Banks loan money that physically does not exist. Okay? So that's magic. That's invisible. That's what the highest, because on this third dimension, okay, whether we accept it or not, banks are God. You don't believe me? Operate without using a bank. Operate without using a banking system, and then you can disagree with me. But if you're operating on some level in this system, you're dealing with banks and you're dealing with its rules and its regulations. So therefore, you're participating, and there's karma attached to that. I don't care how spiritual conscious you are. When you hold money, you operate in this system, there is karma for that, because karma doesn't exempt you because you're conscious if you're still participating it with a conscious mind. So you still have to wash yourself of the karma that comes along with operating under this system. Now you think about that if you're conscious or whatever, even if you're gangster. There's a karma attached to dealing with this banking system. And if you don't know how to wash yourself of that karma and operate with that karma to where your spirit isn't infringed upon, you're still operating under the rules and regulation and guidelines and habits and the positive or negative, or should I say the I don't like to use the word good or bad, but however you want to qualify an entity spirit as good or evil, positive or negative, by operating in this banking system, you are participating in the spiritual nature of that system, whether it's demonic or angelic. Understand that. So with that said, the banking system operates off of money that's not there, not money that's there. Okay? And you've seen that during this crash. The banks had no money. They were negative. Now, if you don't have to be a genius in math, but negative is less than nothing. Okay? So if banks had less than nothing and they were still in business, right? Goldman Sachs, right? JP Morgan Chase, then you think about that. How is that possible to have less than nothing? Because when you're in debt, you have less than nothing and still operate and still flourish and still run the country. Why? Because it's invisible. Okay? The reason why they have physical branches, and the reason why they will always have physical branches, is because a physical branch has to be in order for anything invisible to permeate itself. And that is the illusion. That is the illusion. We are thrown off by the fact that, well, you're saying money's not real, but I'm touching it. I walk into a bank and I get my money. That is because everything invisible that seeks to exist in this dimension has to have a physical anchor. It has to have something. It has to have a house. That is why it's called the House of Rothschild, the House of Rockefeller. So invisible things have to have a physical template in order to express itself. So it's like a game of tag. The invisible comes down to the visible, and then the visible shouts back out to the invisible, and it's a constant link, okay? It's a constant give and take. Okay, so you understand that, but the reason why we have an illusion is because we're touching the money, we're walking into a branch, and we think that that's money, but it's not. The only thing it does, the banking system is very spiritual. Whether you think it's demonic or not, it's still spiritual, and it doesn't violate spiritual laws. Banking does not violate spiritual laws. It obeys it, and that's why the people that rule banking and run the world, because it operates under a spirituality. Okay, so when you have physical branches, it has to be, because the physical branches are the physical conductors for invisible things that have to manifest. So when you look at laws that are passed to regulate banks and try to, restrict banks, and they try to put them in the box, and they try to cut back and cut down on banks, understand this, okay? As long as you have the banking system how it is, with a central bank and a Federal Reserve System and how it operates under fractional reserve banking, I don't care how many laws you pass, Republican or Democrat, it does not matter, for the simple fact that banks are set up to exist under this system. And unless you go through a complete financial revolution and uproot and eliminate a central bank, then it doesn't matter the laws that you pass, because they're always going to be magic. If you cut back and cut down on how they operate, they're only going to adjust, and they're only going to shift. An example of that is right now, okay? Bank of America eliminated, there's no free checking, which means that they're charging you again for checking. It's no big deal. Why are they doing this? Because they have to make up for the laws and the crackdowns that the politicians and sometimes the president is attempting to do, because the American people has cried out that this is what has to be done, even though that the cries are misplaced. But politicians have to respond to two things. They respond to their own agenda, three things: their own agenda, the agenda of the people that control them, and then the people's agenda, okay? And that crying out now has manifested in certain regulations to so-called curtail what banks are doing. But understand that any regulations that happen, okay, banks are only going to make the person, the individual, the so-called taxpayer, the money depositor into these banks, they're going to make you pay. So if a law is passed, we need to know what laws are passed, because the shift and adjustment to these laws that we think are in our best interest, they're only going to make you pay later. Okay, so you're going to pay on the back end. So back to the Bank of America and the free checking, they're charging you now. Okay, why? Because there's certain laws that's passed recently that have minimized certain fees, like the overdraft fee, which a lot of people were complaining about, and a lot of banks were losing customers because they were getting overdraft by simply charging the Starbucks coffee, okay, and being charged $35 for it. So to make this up, Bank of America is like, you know what, we're going to charge for free checking, and that's that. You know, we're going to up our fees in other areas. And it's going to be a constant shift, because why? That is magic. That is how it, and that's out of nowhere. See, it didn't exist at one point in one form, but because something happened in another area, physically, intangibly, something else had to be created in order to offshoot that. And that is the game of tag that is high finance. The game of invisible and visible. That's money. Understand that. That's money. So for those of you that think money is something that you can touch, for those of you that think money is real, I challenge you to show me where it's real. And I will show you an invisible principle that precedes the physical and that is stronger than the physical and animates the physical. Okay? Any example, I throw the challenge out there and I'll prove it to you how all aspects of money is invisible first.